Many leaders that I speak with say they feel overwhelmed, they don't have enough time, and they expect more from their teams. But what if I told you that if you just implemented three things, three critical areas, and removed everything else, that your team productivity would increase, you would be able to minimize the feeling of overwhelm, and you would be able to operate with another level of excellence and efficiency that you never knew was imaginable. Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture podcast. I am your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple. It's to help you create an ecosystem of academic excellence. Through inspiring conversations, practical strategies, and actionable insights, we empower educators just like yourself, change makers, leaders, to foster trust, collaboration, and academic excellence. But not just from an academic standpoint. We also want to be able to provide you with the tools, the strategies, and the resources that you need as an educator so that you can not just empower your school, but we can ultimately impact our communities. Many times I have the opportunity of talking with leaders around the country, and they often say that, Kyle, I feel overwhelmed and I don't feel like there's enough time in the day, and we wear so many hats. As educators, as educational leaders, we are sometimes the mom or the dad to our students. We're the coach, we're the mentor, we're the educational expert, we're the advocate, and all of these various tasks that we wear. And even with all of that, we have to go home and show up for our own children or our own spouses. And I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine that is running a highly successful school in North Carolina. And we were sitting down and I was noticing how they were focusing on all of the tasks, all of the activities, and all of the various things that they needed to be able to implement as they prepared for the new school year. And I wasn't hearing three critical steps, three critical things that we're going to talk about today that when implementing those steps allowed them to be able to be so successful. And this happened to me as a leader, as someone that was driving productivity, focusing on efficiency, focusing on data and measurables, that it required a real sit down for me to be able to become the leader I am today. I was building something successful. I was meeting community partners. I was engaging with my constituents. I was empowering educators. But the reality of it is when you're building in all of these other areas, there's always something that is lacked if you're not doing it efficiently. And what happened to me, the area that was lacking is personally. I was not showing up for my family in the ways that I was. I was not operating and managing money. I was doing things and overcommitting in my life. And what I noticed is that I was doing the same things in my professional career. I had all these visions and all these wants, and it took recognizing that you can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. So it required me to really assess and ask myself, how do I approach this differently? There's no way that I'm stressed and gaining weight and not able to eat and not able to sleep and having all of these issues internally, but I'm still responsible for other people. And oftentimes we forget to be responsible for ourselves first and put on our own mask first before we can be able to help someone else. So what I did is I had to clear the land. I had cars that were way too expensive and $1,800 in car payments, $600 car insurance, $2,500 roughly in expenses going out a month just from a car perspective. So what did I do? I gave them up. I had to turn in those vehicles because what I recognize is that those vehicles were draining resources that could be going somewhere else. I had to be willing to take the hit and understand how to remove all of these various things to be able to create a new foundation. When a developer comes in and they're preparing to build a new neighborhood, one of the things that they have to do before they start building is clear the land. And one of the things that I want to remind you to do as you're building your school initiatives, as you're creating impact with your educators, as you are becoming the leader to move your team forward, is you have to clear the land. So in this conversation, we're going to talk about three critical areas so that we can focus on becoming and the doing so that we can be able to have the fruit of the system, that we can be able to empower teachers, educators, as well as impact our communities. The first step of this process, and what I had to recognize, is that being is the system. And when I think about the three steps of be, do, and then have, oftentimes we want to have success. We want to have great academic outcomes. We want to have more students enrolled in our systems. We want to have more wealth personally. We want to have positive relationships or teams that work together. But having can't happen unless doing is happening, and doing cannot happen unless we become something first. So the first step to anything is you have to become the leader that your team, that your students, that your community needs. I wanted to have success. I wanted to have events and all of these various things on a school level, but there were so many gaps in my professional career because I wasn't being, and I had more developing to do internally that would then show up in my action. So when I think about being, it's the system. It's the system that we first have to implement, but by first auditing so that we understand that culture is not just what you say. It's who you are when no one is watching. It's recognizing that in order to do anything well, we have to commit to doing everything well. And leadership starts with not just strategy, it starts with your presence. It starts with your energy and how you show up. It starts with those small commitments that you are always consistent in following through. It starts with your mindset, and belief sets the tone to everything that you're doing as an educational leader. Being includes your habits. It includes your cultural and self-awareness. It includes your emotional intelligence and empathy. It includes really being able to see your values in action on a day-to-day basis. Being is the system. And one question that I want you to think through is, what are you becoming? And are you focusing on more of the being or the doing? Many educators that I talk to around the country do a lot, but they're not reading books. They're not assessing their calendars to understand how to maximize their own time. They're not having conversations with a potential coach, mentor, or even personally a therapist. And oftentimes I believe that we have to clean up our own households before we can come in and transform schools. We have to clean up our own internal selves before we can impact students within a classroom. What you are becomes the cultural permission slip of your organization. And it shows people that it is okay not to take care of ourselves, not to become, as long as we're doing. So when we think about being, that is planting the seed in the ground, that I am committed to being able to grow. I am looking at myself. I am becoming the best possible leader that is needed to be able to go off and lead my team forward. Once we plant the seed, now we have to water it. And then it leads us to step number 2, which is the root. And the system is the doing. So if being is the system, the roots that are formed in the ground is the actual doing and the activity. Because oftentimes we may be becoming, we may be setting our new habits, we may be more aware, we may be reading books and going to coaching sessions and mentorship sessions and conferences and professional development. But if we're not actually executing on these various tasks or on these various responsibilities, and we're leading from behind a desk in an office and not going out there and going on a listening tour and going out there and showcasing what the expectation and standard is within our building, then we won't be able to lead our teams forward. And the reason that many educators have communicated leaving the profession is not because of pay. It's not oftentimes because of students. It's because that they don't see leaders in action. So the root system represents the actions, the routines, that ultimately anchor your organizational culture, the processes, the norms, the rituals, and the training that grow beneath the surface. I believe it's a bamboo tree that is so interesting to learn about because I believe it takes 5 years for the bamboo tree to grow down. And then it takes 3 months for the bamboo tree to be seen above ground, and it shoots up, I believe, 5 or 30 feet. I'm not sure of the specific growth of the tree, but I know it takes years for the root system to go deep in the ground. And that's what needs to happen in the becoming phase. You need to be growing beneath the ground. So by the time you engage with educators, you empower students, you connect and partner with parents, you're out connecting with the community, all they see is that proven success, that credibility, that growth going from the ground to shooting up 30 feet because you are representing the actions and the routines and the behaviors and the habits that are anchoring a positive and a contagious culture. It's the daily routines. It's the daily doing that reinforces your being. Consistency is culture. Intentional consistency is contagious culture. And without intentional roots, toxic weeds grow unchecked. Without intentional roots of norms that are connected to the mission, the vision, values of our school, and the standard of excellence that we're working to being able to create and emulate and mirror as educational leaders, then our students now see this and they believe certain things are acceptable when they're not. Whether it is educators coming to work late, being out of dress code, students speaking out of turn, parents coming up and expecting meetings without going through a process, all of these little things that are allowed over a period of time become the anchor to your culture. So if you're having cultural issues, conflicts that are unresolved, if you're having communication breakdowns, then we have to not look at just the system, we have to look at leadership. In order for us to look at leadership, we have to look internally for ourselves and ask ourselves, how am I showing up? What culture am I spreading? So if being is the system and the roots that grow is the doing, then the third component of this be, do, have model, the fruit that is bared, is the having. When we look at the visible results, the engagement of our students, staff, as well as our community stakeholders, the performance of our educators or even our students in the classroom, the innovation that is happening and the retention of our teams, of our stakeholders, all of that is the fruit. This is what we all want as educators. We want teachers to stay with us and be engaged in what we're doing. We want to walk into classrooms and have students engaged in the lesson with hands raised. And it's this well-organized chaos of education and inquiry happening on a day-to-day basis. We want parents to be engaged in their students' learning and come to volunteer or show up to various events that the school has. We want to be engaged with our community and have strong community partnerships that are stewarding and providing us with the resources that can allow us to grow our institution forward. The fruit always reflects the truth and the health of the root and the being systems. So if we don't have engagement, if we don't have performance, if we're not academically achieving, if we have teachers that are not being retained or students that are leaving our system, if we have individuals that have toxic weeds that are disrupting specific department teams, then we don't look at the having phase. We have to go back to the becoming. We have to go back to asking ourselves, well, what are we doing? What are the habits? What are we showing that clearly is making this culturally acceptable for our school? And then this allows us to go back to our mission, go back to our vision, go back to our leadership, and then re-ask ourselves, well, what are some of the things that we need to become? The books that we need to read, the coaching that we may need to attend, the conferences that we may need to invest in, the consultants that we may need to hire. so that we can understand how to become these things when no one is watching. So when the lights are on, they see us doing values in action. You can't fake culture, just like you can't fake performance, just like we can't fake engagement, just like we can't fake academic results and achievement. You harvest what you cultivate. So every day that you show up as an educational leader, what are you cultivating? What are you cultivating in your behavior when you walk in the building? What are you cultivating in how you speak to people? What are you cultivating in your ability to prepare as an educator? What are you cultivating when you engage with parents? What are you cultivating when you engage with conflict? What are you cultivating when you show up on a daily basis? What are you allowing? What are you stopping? Ultimately, you have to ask yourself, what am I cultivating today? If you ultimately want better results, better outcomes, if you want to be able to achieve at a higher level, have students that are engaged, have students that are academically performing, have staff that is engaged and bought into your vision and mission, you have to start with who you are and what you are rooted in. You have to be committed to habits, being self-aware, emotionally intelligent, and showing values in action. You have to always be learning. You have to be committed to be curious about everything and unlock this inner child that allows you to be fascinated about all of the things in life. One of the things that I've recognized as a father is that I love when children are in the stages of that 2 to 6 to 9-year-old stage, because they're so fascinated about all of the things, whether it's why the light switch turns on, or what is that's picking up the dirt at another person's yard, or why does this specific table sit 4 seats rather than 6 seats, or all of these little small things that kids just want to learn about, that sometimes even question or challenge their parents' ability to be able to share or their parents' knowledge base. I think the same thing is true about leadership. Leadership is service in action. It's being willing to ask ourselves questions on how do we grow these things. It's being willing to cultivate a curiosity in ourselves before we can create curiosity within our educators to empower curiosity within our students. It's taking things apart, breaking them down, and collectively as a team building them back together. If you want to be able to have donors that are more interested in what you're doing, if you want to have teachers and students and families interested in coming to your school, if you want to have the media even interested in some of the great programming and innovations that you have, it's important that us as educators be more interesting by first becoming more interested. What are you doing? What are you showing? And how are you showing up as a leader that is anchoring that culture? The reason that your team's not moving forward is because you haven't committed to becoming. The reason that your team isn't moving forward is because you haven't focused on the commitment of the daily small task that shows that you are doing this work, not just communicating it. Strategy is relationship building. Strategy is consistency. Strategy looks like honoring commitments. Strategy is active listening. Strategy is holding people accountable to the standard. Strategy is enforcing specific policies that don't match with mission statement. And oftentimes we read all of these books on all of these strategic elements and ways to effectively operate as teams, but strategy is honoring the commitments that honor the mission, that honor the vision that we have set. One of the questions that I have for you is, what are you willing to do today as an educational leader to become more? And once we commit to the becoming process, how are you going to show up and do that on a daily basis so that we can commit to doing the habits, showcasing the values, and having actions and choices that align with the leader that we need to be for our school, with the person that our students need, with the person that parents thought they were getting when they sent their student to your school. Because this will then allow us to have high-performing, high-quality schools. This will allow us to have students that are engaged in the classroom. This will allow us to have high retention and low attrition rates. This will allow us to have community partners and donors that are wanting to mobilize resources for our school. And if you need help with understanding how to be, how to do, so that you can be able to have, click the link below and schedule a call with us. Let our team at the Culture Lab help you understand how to assess and audit your culture so that we can put strategic initiatives in place for you not just to have right now, but to build a system that allows you to have over the next decade. Thank you for joining me on the Contagious Culture podcast. And I want you to ask yourself this week, what type of culture, what kind of culture am I seeing? What type of culture am I seeing within my school? But not just what type of culture am I seeing, what type of culture am I spreading? Culture is everywhere, y'all. Make yours worth catching. My name is Kyle King. I'm the host of the Contagious Culture podcast, and we'll see you next time.